Welcome to the Virtual Manager podcast. My name's Anna Russell. I'm an artist manager and founder of The Virtual Manager. Throughout my career, I've developed and managed several music artists from new unsigned acts right through to globally successful ones. This podcast is for all unmanaged or independent music artists who want to start, build, or grow a successful, sustainable music career. As an artist manager, every week I receive multiple requests for feedback from music artists. And while these are well-intentioned, more often than not, they're not well executed. And I wanted to address this in a podcast episode so that you can ask for feedback on your music from industry personnel the right way. Over the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to be giving you some guidelines for asking for feedback, which will not only increase the chances of you actually getting a reply, but also ensure you end up with feedback that is constructive and you can actually put to good use. Too often, artists are asking for general feedback, which means they get very general responses, which don't actually help you to either hone your craft and get better at the music or progress your music career. But before we do that, before we get into those guidelines, there are a few questions to ask yourself. The first of these is, why are you asking for feedback? If it's because you think someone, i.e. an artist manager, a record label, will hear your music and sign you up on the strength of that alone, think again. This is not how artists get signed, and it gives the impression that the artist thinks their progress can be fast-tracked in this way. It can. As a general rule, people don't sign music. They sign music plus momentum, meaning they want to see that you are taking control of your own career, getting your music out there and building a fan base. They need to see proof of concept first. If you want to introduce your music to the industry, the best way to do that is to release it and get it out there and be out there performing, not send them it with a vague email asking for feedback. Even if artists did get signed because they cold emailed music industry personnel, you should be honest and direct about why you are contacting them, not under the guise of wanting feedback. With that said, there may be occasions where you'll find it useful to seek constructive feedback on your music. For example, I think feedback can be particularly helpful during the process of developing your sound identity and through the songwriting and production process, i.e. whilst your music is still in an embryonic or demo state. Feedback can also be really useful for finished material if you're trying to clarify who your target fans are and the best way of positioning and marketing your music. It's for these reasons that every month we have an A&R feedback day in the Virtual Manager membership, where members submit a song or a work in progress for me to feedback on. However, for the most part, I steer away from feeding back on specific songwriting or production aspects of the song and instead focus on how I think that song can be best used and promoted by the artist. The reason for that is because I'm an artist manager. And although I do have a music degree and I consider myself knowledgeable about music, I'm not a musician and I'm not a songwriter. Therefore, the value of my thoughts on the writing or production of the song will be limited. And that brings us back full circle to the question I originally posed. Why are you asking for feedback? Is it because you're unsure of the structure of the song or a certain sound or instrument you've used? Is it a question on lyrics or vocal production you have? Or are you wondering how you think the song should be categorized? What's its primary genre? Who would your target listeners be for that genre? And how do you reach them? Which marketing or promotional strategies would be best for the song? You want to get really clear on which aspects of the song you'd like feedback on and why. Then make sure you state this in your email or communication to the person that you're contacting. Asking a specific direct question such as, in your opinion, do you think the song would benefit from less busy production? Or is it too sparse? Will mean the recipient knows exactly what your challenge is and be able to help you with those aspects. In turn, you'll get clear, unequivocal feedback on exactly those aspects, and hopefully that will bring you clarity on how to proceed as a result. Simply asking for feedback on your music is way too vague, and if it gets any response at all, it will likely be not very constructive and too general to be of use to you. Help them make it easy to help you. The next question I want you to think about is, who are you asking? Who are you asking for feedback? Are they a songwriter or musician? In which case they'd be great for any feedback you're looking for on specific aspects of the writing or musical performance. Publishers and sync agencies can be great at giving feedback on songwriting and production as well. Is the person a producer, a mix engineer, or mastering engineer? If so, it's a great opportunity to ask about the recording, production, mixing, or mastering of your song. Or are they a record label A&R, an artist manager, or perhaps a distributor? These are the best people to be asking about release strategy, marketing, promotion, and business-related questions. Music PRs and radio pluggers are great for questions on promotion and which media outlets might be good targets for your music. So really think about who you're contacting and what they're going to be able to feed back on expertly. That means you're going to get the best of their knowledge because you're asking about the right aspects of the song for those industry contacts. The next thing I want you to think about, and it's very closely linked to who you're contacting, is which stage of your career are you in? So are you just starting out? Are you in a long phase of artist development where you're trying to work out what your sound identity is or what your strengths as a writer are? If so, bear that in mind when you're asking for feedback and perhaps give people that context. Or are you at the next stage where you have great material that is finished and complete and you're taking it to market and you're wondering how best to reach the people that you think are going to be the fan base demographic for this music? What might be the best strategies for getting your music out there and promoting it more heavily? So again, you want to take that into consideration and give people some context on that when you're asking for feedback. Or are you an established artist who is looking to further grow your fan base or further grow your relevance or maintain what it is you've already built and you're thinking about the new music that you've got coming or the musical direction you want to go in next? Again, give people that context so that they can give you feedback that is relevant to the stage you're at and what challenges or obstacles that you might be facing or concerned about at that time. So just keep all of those things in mind. Now, in terms of actually asking for feedback and making sure that you get a response, there are some good professional guidelines to follow when asking for feedback. For those times, these guidelines will increase your chances of getting a reply with useful, constructive feedback, which is especially important if you're cold emailing someone you don't have a prior relationship with. So let's start going through the guidelines. First of all, I always think it's best to ask for feedback on your music over email. This is the best format for people to be able to give feedback, unless, of course, you're lucky enough to be speaking with the recipient in person, i.e. perhaps at an A&R listening session or some sort of feedback session at a music industry conference. Otherwise, I think go with email. Don't resort to things like social media where messages can be easily lost and it's a bit trickier for people to kind of listen and then write back long messages. When you're emailing, do not include attachments on your email. Music files are likely to be very big and clog up people's inboxes, which they won't thank you for. It also gives them one extra step in having to download the files before they're able to play them to listen. Again, you want to make it as easy as possible for people to help you. Therefore, include just one link, ideally to a private SoundCloud track or playlist that they can simply click on to listen. And make sure that this link is included in the first paragraph of your email. Don't bury the listening link way down at the bottom of your email. If people are very time pressed, they might not necessarily read right down to the bottom. They just want to get to what it is you want and how they can help and listen as quickly as possible. If you're sending more than one track for them to feedback on, send an absolute maximum of 3 to 5 songs. Be aware that most people simply won't have time to listen and then feedback constructively to more than one song, let alone a full EP or an album. If the recipient wants to hear more, they'll reply and ask you for it, at which time you can just add additional material to the same playlist and update them by email to let them know you've done so. So you don't need to be faffing around with extra links and uploading loads of stuff and sending more emails. Just update the initial playlist that you sent them if they ask to hear some more stuff. And keep your email short. You want it to be succinct. All it needs to include is a very brief introduction to you, the artist, and some context on the stage of your career you're at and what you're working towards. Then explain why you are emailing them. Make it clear that you know who they are and what they do, so they can see that you are emailing them specifically for a reason. You're not just sending out a blanket email to any industry email address you could find. And then which aspects of the music you want feedback on. Remember, we talked previously about being as specific on this as you possibly can. So all that should not take up more than a few lines at most. You want to keep your email really short and sweet. At the very bottom of your email, you might want to include a link to your website or the social media account that you use the most in case they want to check out more. And I'm going to say it again, be explicit about what you are asking for feedback on and which specific aspects you want feedback on. If you ask a vague question, you'll get a vague reply if you get a reply at all. And it should go without saying, but send the email to only one person, address them by their first name, and tailor your email to who they are, what they do, and the question you're asking them. Show that you understand who they are and you've singled them out because you value their opinion. All of those little things are going to make the recipients more inclined to take the time to listen and respond when they can. Now, in terms of what makes a good professional email when contacting music industry, that's for another episode to come in future because there's lots more we can go into in terms of professional etiquette and email tips. But for specifically seeking feedback on your music, what's most important is that you're clear on why you're asking for feedback, i.e., which specific aspects of the song or the music, who you're asking, and that you're using the professional guidelines as we've covered here. Finally, a little note I want to just give on asking for feedback on your music in general. Please remember that feedback on your music is just one person's opinion, no matter how well informed they may be. The most important aspect of your music is always that you're making the kind of music you want to make and that you're proud of it. That's it for this week's episode of the Virtual Manager podcast. I hope that that's helped give you some insight and just start to shift your thinking a little bit on why you're asking for feedback, why it's important, and how it can actually help you move forward as a music artist. I'll be back next week with the next episode on Tuesdays as usual. I hope you'll join me then. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Virtual Manager podcast. If you've found it useful, I invite you to check out the Virtual Manager membership site. The Virtual Manager is an essential resource for independent music artists who want to start, build, or grow a successful, sustainable music career. It ensures that you have the foundations of that music career in place, then helps you to build on those to achieve your music career goals. With monthly music industry training, a library of tools and resources, A&R feedback on your music, access to live Q&As with me, plus an active, supportive community of like-minded artists, the Virtual Manager is the perfect place to be for any unmanaged or independent artist. The Virtual Manager relaunches very shortly, so to get early bird access at the lowest membership price, join the waiting list now at thevirtualmanager.co.uk. Finally, please take a minute to review and subscribe to this podcast. It helps more independent music artists to find us.